Wars don't start with bullets. They start with loans. Long before the first shot is fired, long before the drums of patriotism begin their thunder, the battlefield is drawn, not in the war rooms of generals, but in the ledgers of bankers. Every great conflict in human history carries a hidden signature, not of kings, not of nations, but of interest rates, bond yields, and credit lines that stretch across oceans. The question is not why wars happen. The question is, who profits when nations bleed? This is the story of the invisible army. The architects who built the battlefield, the designers of disaster. This is war by design. Before 1914, Europe was not a powder keg. It was a factory. A machine of unprecedented power, railways connecting capitals, steel mills forging empires, telegraph lines humming with commerce. Trade was global. Industry was booming. The world had never been more connected. And beneath it all, a quiet concentration of power. Not in palaces, not in parliaments. In counting houses, in private banks. In the hands of men whose names rarely appeared in newspapers, but whose influence shaped the fates of nations. The Rothschilds, the Warburgs, J.P. Morgan, not conspirators in shadows, but architects of a system far more powerful than any monarchy. They built the invisible army, not soldiers, capital. Because capital doesn't march, it flows silently across borders into treasuries, into armament factories, into the pockets of politicians who believed they were in control. By 1914, every major government in Europe was indebted, not to their people. To private financiers, debt is not just money owed. It's leverage, it's influence, it's control. And when the world is bound together by debt, war becomes inevitable. Not because of nationalism, not because of an assassinated archduke, but because debt needs to be serviced, and there is no profit in peace. When World War I erupted, the world called it tragedy. The bankers called it opportunity. Every nation that marched to war did so on borrowed money. Germany, France, Britain, Russia, all of them issued bonds. All of them took loans. And the financiers, the invisible army, funded them all. This was not patriotism. This was arithmetic. War bonds paid higher interest than peace ever could. Armament contracts generated returns no civilian industry could match. Every government that entered the war became a client. Every battle extended the repayment schedule. Gold flowed faster than blood. J.P. Morgan alone arranged over $3 billion in loans for the Allies, the equivalent of tens of billions today. The House of Morgan became the purchasing agent for Britain and France, controlling what they bought, where they bought it, and how much they paid. Neutrality was an illusion. America didn't enter the war because of principles. It entered because its financial system was tied to the survival of Britain and France. If they fell, the banks collapsed. Every shell that exploded in the Somme carried a signature of credit. But here's where the design becomes clear. Wars don't just generate profit during the fighting. They generate profit after. When the guns finally fell silent in 1918, Europe was destroyed. Entire economies were ash. Currencies were worthless. And who rebuilt it? The same banks that financed the destruction. The Treaty of Versailles didn't just redraw borders. It restructured debt. Germany was crushed under reparations designed not to punish, but to extract. To keep money flowing upward. To ensure that the system, not the nations, survived. And when that debt became unbearable, when inflation devoured Germany, when desperation turned into rage, the cycle repeated. World War II wasn't a sequel. It was a foreclosure. Why do we repeat this? Why do we march generation after generation into conflicts that serve interests we cannot see? Because wars are not fought for land. They're fought to reset the system. Think of it like this. When a nation accumulates too much debt, when inflation spirals, when the people grow restless, the system has a problem. The machine is breaking down. War is the reboot. It erases debts through destruction. It creates new debts through reconstruction. It redirects public rage toward foreign enemies instead of domestic bankers. It consolidates power in the hands of those who control the flow of capital. Peace, after all, is expensive. In peace, people demand schools, hospitals, roads. They demand rights. They demand accountability. In war, they demand only victory, and victory is financed. This is the psychology of control. Debt is not just economic, it's psychological. It creates dependency, it creates fear, it ensures compliance. And war is the ultimate expression of that control. Because in war, citizens stop asking questions. They obey, they sacrifice. They accept austerity as patriotism. The battlefield becomes a distraction. While nations bled, the architects of the system met in quiet rooms, Versailles, Bretton Woods, later Davos, and redesigned the board. Every major conflict since 1914 has followed the same pattern: rise in debt, economic instability, engineered crisis, war, reconstruction, new debt. The cycle is not accidental, it's designed. War is the system's way of erasing its own mistakes. And we, the citizens, the soldiers, the taxpayers, we are the collateral. Look at the 20th century. World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. Each followed a financial crisis. Each enriched those who financed it. Each left nations deeper in debt than before. The pattern is undeniable. And it continues today, not with trenches, but with drones. With proxy wars, with currency wars, with debt traps disguised as development. The tools have changed, the architects remain. The battlefield was never in Europe, it was in the balance sheets. The real war was never between nations. It was between those who create money and those who die for it. World War I didn't begin in Sarajevo. It began in the counting houses of London, New York, and Paris, where men calculated that profit could be extracted from chaos, that gold could be harvested from graves. And when the smoke cleared, when 10 million were dead, when empires had fallen, the system did not collapse, it expanded, because that was the design. When money becomes the god, war becomes the ritual, and the ritual never ends, not until we see the pattern. Not until we understand that wars are not fought by nations, but financed by interests that transcend them. The greatest deception in history is not that wars happen. It's that we believe they happen by accident. They don't. They're designed by those who profit from rebuilding the ruins. History doesn't repeat, it collects interest. If this opened your eyes to the patterns hidden beneath the surface of history, you're ready to see more. This is Power and Finance, where we don't just tell stories, we decode the system. Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because the truths we uncover are the ones they never wanted you to see. The next war, the next crisis, the next collapse. They're already being designed. And those who understand the game are the only ones who survive it. Join us. See what others miss. Power and Finance. Follow the money. Find the truth.